when the world's too dark of a place to be, and you need an escape from reality. Open up those pages, it's sci-fi or fantasy, whatever genre you please. And join a book club, 'cause you won't read it on your own. Join a book club, so you'll be held accountable. It's just a means to an end, but you're doing it with your friends, so join the book club by DLC.
Well, hello, book clubbers. Welcome back. We had a little week off last week. Apologies for that. Sometimes scheduling gets in the way. We appreciate you bearing with us, but we're back. You're back. We're dancing. That's all that matters. I'm Jeff Kanata. I'm here with Lana Bashinsky. Hi, Lana.
Hello, good morning. It's just like Jeff Goldblum said, when you go away for a work trip, work will find a way to make you not be able to do anything else.
Work will find a way.
Work
He also
will
said,
find a way.
He also once said, I'm turning into a fly.
Famously. Yeah.
Which also applies here in some way. Hey, we got 3 chapters for you this week of the Bonehunters. Chapters 8, 9, and 10. Good stuff, interesting stuff, juicy stuff, illuminating stuff, I would say. Some interesting lore and clarifications on how systems work, which is fun to see.
Yeah.
We're going to get into all of it. But first, we like to start the show with a non-spoiler topic, hopefully sent in by you, the viewers. We love getting non-spoiler topics from you. And you can send it to us a number of different ways, one of which is emailing us, dlcfeedback@gmail.com. We also have a Discord that you can post on, which is 5x5DLC on Discord. There's a book club section there. You can also just post a comment on the YouTube video, however you'd like to get a hold of us. Well, we did get an email this week from our friend Tickly Gonad.
Classic.
Tickly Gonad, you're the
Tickly
best.
Gonad, bringing the community together. Great discussions. Can't wait for this one.
Yes, Tickly Gonad with a great question a couple of weeks ago. They are, part of their email is thanking us for answering that question. You ask them, we'll answer them. Send them in, folks. We love getting the topics from you. But Tickly Gonad has a second topic, which I think is going to make for a good discussion as well. This is the email. Tickly Gonad writes, I struggle with the lack of compassion, empathy, and kindness presented to us by the majority of mainstream media today. I worry for the future of my children. I worry for the future my children will grow up in, and feel the best way of counteracting all the negativity is through being as happy and kind a person as possible, being the change I want to see. An enormous amount of people would benefit from experiencing the Malazan Book of the Fallen. And though I try my best to recommend it regularly, I most often receive responses like, I don't read fantasy. Have you successfully recommended these books since beginning the book club? And how would you go about persuading someone to read something outside of their comfort zone? Great question, Tickly Gonad. Keep them coming. Keep the tickles coming. That's terrible. Lana, what do you say to this? Have you recommended Malazan Book of the Fallen to friends and family? And or have you tried to persuade folks to read things out of their comfort zone?
Yes, to both. I have, when it comes to reading, I have a bunch of friends who read voraciously. So I think the initial like, hey, I'm doing this thing, it was not very hard to sort of get them to try it out. Definitely my siblings tried out reading the books to keep up with the book club when we started because they're supportive and wonderful. And then I had a couple colleagues who it was similar to you, Jeff, in that it's been on their list for a long time. And so finally being like, bump that one up to the top was not very hard. But I've also had people, they just like to read. So I'm like, here's like a long series. The thing that I found that the way other people read is not like I read. I'm like, I've started this thing. I'm going to read it till I'm done. And not the first book, but 10 books. And a lot of people don't read that way. A lot of people, they need like a breather to like leave the world and come back to it. I don't know how you do that with these books personally, but to each their own. So I haven't had anybody outside of a couple of people who just were already into them, read past book 4 or 5, I think. But I've definitely convinced people to read things out of their comfort zone. And often it comes in a space that is, it's more like a trade. It's like a barter. It's like, hey, this is something that I think that you're going to enjoy. And even if you don't
will wash your
enjoy,
car for you.
exactly. I will give you $100. No, I would love to read something that you have read that I have not. And then I want to discuss these things with you. So what I'm offering is really the experience together and not like, here's a chore for you to do that you're not very excited about. I think it ends up being either a bit of a challenge for somebody, like competitively. I'm very competitively driven. So the second somebody's like, read it. And I'm like, I don't want to. They're like, what, are you scared? I'm like, no, I've already read it. Like it's too effective. It's embarrassing. But sort of building things up in that way where you think about what that person actually wants, which maybe is to hang out with you and have conversations with you. And you can loop this into that. And I found it to be quite effective.
That's a really great way to go about it. I've never tried that approach. Maybe I'll have to adopt that one. That's excellent. I've recommended these books to everyone that will listen to me, and several people that won't.
Yes.
But the most common situation I find myself in is sort of in casual conversation. I'm in this strange place in life now where most of my social interactions are with other parents of kids that are classmates of my children. And we have a lovely community here where I live in the suburb of Denver. And we have fun folks that we hang out with, neighborhood folks that we've become friends with. But it's not people that I started hanging around with because we had similar interests. I mean, unless you count having children as an interest. But you find that some of your interests overlap and some of your interests don't, but this is my new social circle, right? So I have found a couple of dads that I am friendly with that are into fantasy books, which is a fun discovery to have. I think Game of Thrones has done a great thing in kind of mainstreamizing that interest, so I effusively recommended Malazan Book of the Fallen. I had one dad friend who started listening to it as an audiobook, which if he had asked me, I would have said, maybe not for this one. But he's a doctor and basically consumes a lot of stuff via audiobook, and because it's just the way his work schedule is and how he travels and all that stuff. So he's constantly listening to books. And so he's like, oh yeah, I got Gardens of the Moon. And I think he bounced off of it because he found it, you listen to an audiobook, you're kind of doing other things. These are not novels that you can sort of passively listen to.
Yeah.
You kind of have to have your full attention. So I felt really like, oh, he missed it. Darn. Because he was like, oh, I tried that. I know you said it was so amazing and I tried it, but it wasn't for me. And just recently I talked to him again and he's like, oh yeah. I started the second book. So I'm like, okay, Dead House Gates, you're in. Let's do this.
Nice.
So I'm hoping he gets through the second book. But again, audio. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's the other thing about recommending this series in particular is I recommend people read the first book in the same way that we did. I know that when we first started doing the show, people were like, that was way too big of a chunk for a single episode. But I think that to get the rhythm of the writing, particularly in that first book, I talked very much in the episode of being like, there's details. I'm letting them, they'll be important if they're important. And I think it's very easy to not do that. And it could be a slower process. But it took me, I think, about until 50% of the way through the book to be like, okay, Tattersall's so cool. We have, this assassin possession. Like, there's all these little pieces. I don't think Sorry's in the first book. There's all those little pieces that were sort of starting to come together, and I could see a clear picture of where we were going. And so no matter what, being like, even if you want to stop reading it, you must get halfway is sort of, I think, an easier thing for people to digest, because they see like where their exit ramp is if they really hate fantasy or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as for the second part of the question, I approach it differently, I think, about recommending things outside of people's comfort zone. I tend not to. And I think this comes from many years. I mean, I've been a critic, quote unquote, for, 15 plus years. And so people tend to ask me for recommendations. And I have learned over time that way lies oblivion. That you got to come to them, or at least that's been my approach, is like, I got to come to them, because so frequently it'll be like, oh, hey, you do the movie podcast. What great movie? And I'll be like, oh, my favorite movie of the year is, Anatomy of a Fall or something. And they'll watch it and go,
There weren't even any Avengers in that one.
there weren't even any Avengers. That's right. Yeah. Not a single explosion. And so then you realize, know your audience. So I have been more reluctant than you, but I like this plan of bartering.
Mhm.
But I've been more reluctant to try to push people outside their comfort zone, because
They don't
I
like
feel
it.
my job is to recognize their comfort zone and cater my recommendation to something that might already be inclined to work for them.
I find that the act of recommending something is strangely vulnerable.
Yes.
I'm like, here's
Agreed.
something I really like.
Yes.
Like
And people are not shy about telling you they hated the thing you recommended.
Yeah, and I feel like that was something that like felt like a bruise if somebody didn't, like it or reacted to it in a certain way. That it's when I identify something, I guess, that it's like kind of out of my comfort zone, being like, why is that out of my comfort zone? Do I actually care that this person doesn't like the thing that I like? I felt it slightly yesterday when we had a conversation very briefly about movies, and I was like, I really like this movie, and you were like, ooh, and then I was like,
I tried to do that sensitively.
You did, and ultimately, I don't care what you think, and I think coming to
well, fine, then I will not be sensitive anymore.
Coming to that space of like, why does it matter if this person likes the thing? I don't like the idea of like feeling afraid or timid, or like I don't want to like hide the things that I think are beautiful or cool or whatever, just because somebody else has a different reaction to it.
Sure.
And I find myself pressing myself to do those things over like more often than not, because I want to not feel that feeling.
Oh,
Like
that's
I used to
interesting.
hate public speaking. I would physically get so much adrenaline. I would be like visibly shaking, not because I was scared, but because it's just like, it's very intense. And so what did I do? Every Friday I would get up in front of a group of people and be like, hey, who wants to come talk with me over here? And now I'm kind of over it. And I like being over it more than I liked feeling scared of it. And I like giving recommendations to people and giving them an experience, even if they're like, I didn't enjoy that. Then I like I like giving somebody a bad experience versus not giving them any experience. It's not quite the way I want to say that, but I like sharing with people so much more than I like not sharing with people. I think it's more fun.
I think that's admirable. And I think it's awesome that you face your fears like that. Another side of it for me is that from their perspective, following a recommendation is an act of trust.
Yes.
And sometimes I feel like, they're less likely to trust me in the future. I led them astray. Now their esteem for my recommendations has fallen. Like, I guess Jeff's the guy that recommends stuff I'm not going to like.
See, I do know that. And I hope that, I guess, like personally, I hope that my approach is something that is not like, hey, I tried because I thought this is something you'd like. let me try again. I feel like, again, not to just completely continue talking about other shows that we do, but I felt like I did that with you on the DLC video game podcast. So many times I'd be like, try this, you're going to love it. And you'd be like, I hated it. It was ugly. And then I was like, okay.
What?
I was like, there's like 3 games I recommended. And you were like, bad, bad, bad. And then I recommended Loop Hero. And I listened to the podcast the next week. And you were like, I couldn't stop playing this game. And I was like, yes, I did it. And then you were like, but it's ugly. And I was like, almost did it.
Well,
So
you have to
close.
admit that game is ugly.
It's appealing in a particular way.
Okay, fair enough.
I think Wild Frost was and that's
Yes.
recent.
Oh.
That was like last year. I finally
One of
felt
my
like
favorite
I
games
got
of
you.
recent memory. Yes.
So I like learning people, and I hope that recommendations. I would hope that like when you're working with people, just like thinking of Tickly Gonad's question here of like putting people outside their comfort zone, it is almost like a fun game within itself to be like, I think that I know you, and the act of failing to recommend things to you helps me get to know you better. And eventually I will give you a recommendation that I know that you'll love because we've grown that much closer through the act of doing this.
Love it. As usual, Lana, nailing it. Beautiful. I will also say I agree with Tickly Gonad about the fact that more people should read Malazan because specifically of the thing they point out, which is the compassion that's at its heart. And we could all use more of that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, that was lovely. As usual, Tickly Gonad with the great topics. Keep them coming, and everybody else, keep them coming as well. We now move to our main discussion. So spoilers starting now for chapters 8, 9, and 10. We start chapter 8 with Gnos Perrin, who is just, traveling on a mission, hanging out, moving, trying to avoid the plague that's happening. And we got another old friend who shows up right away in this first scene of chapter 8.
A little flashback.
Yeah, it's Krupp. I missed Krupp and Krupp's manner of speaking. I love Krupp.
It's very hard not to just highlight the whole Krupp section and be like, this is the quote I'm reading. And spoilers, it is. He's the best. The way he talks is so great. I just love him. I was so delighted to see him pop up in this chapter.
Yeah. Yep, me too. It's just awesome. And, Perrin's thinking about like, wow, maybe Krupp should have been the master of the deck instead of me. And Krupp arrives, we have this kind of vision of Krupp, and he's typically cryptic, but kind of foreshadowing some interesting stuff. He says, you gotta go to this place, and you have to arrive by any means necessary. It's really important you go there. I'm like, okay, well, sounds exciting. I don't know what's going on, but very cool little moment with Krupp.
I just I feel like even just the subtle power, and you can't tell if it's just that Raced is like whatever, but he's like the guardian of the finished. Yeah, and like it describes Krupp as just being like somehow slips by him. He's just like, I'm just supposed to be
so
here.
Good.
And it's like, is that a powerful moment of Krupp, or is it just an obnoxiousness that he's just allowed or whatever? I just love the subtle manipulation. Like there's skill in that moment. That's like a single sentence that you can just picture Raced just eye rolling at the door frame.
So good. Yeah. So basically what he's saying is you got to go to 7 cities because the gods are at war, and Hood is at the center of things. Big foreshadowing for events to come. We
haven't really talked to Hood, have we? We've just seen him.
We had that one moment where Quick Ben like grabbed Hood, right, and was like, "Stop doing stuff." But yeah, not really. We haven't. Hood has not exactly been cotillion. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
we're not been hanging out with them.
Yeah, but he showed up and he took that one dude's body, and he was like, "This guy's mine,"
right,
and then he pieced out.
That's right. Yeah. Anyway, so then Gnos is thinking about Absalar, and all of a sudden, poof, Jagged shows up. Jagged shows up. New character, Ganath.
Ganath, who is in the epitaph for the chapter.
That's right. Good catch. This is a Jagged who is like, hey,
Your
I
girl
broke
needs a
out
bath.
broke out of my barrow, just hanging out. I need to go, and there's this binding ritual that got broken. Something wants to take over the world. I gotta fix it. Are you going the same? Can we I don't know? Can we hang? Can we Are you going that way? Because I'm going that way.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is when I don't know if it happened previously, but Ganuz can just speak Jagged.
Well, he's like
I hung
master
out with
of the deck
Raced
so
power.
much. Yeah, maybe I hung out with Raced so much I just picked it up.
Oh yeah,
I like that too.
Yeah,
Just tyrant talk. You know how you do late nights.
little tyrant chat. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Oh, just thinking about taking over everything.
Yeah. So Ganath's like, two things I need to do: stop this force from destroying the world and restart the ritual, and bath
time.
Second one's bath.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they're gonna travel together. Then we cut over to Absalar, who is hanging out with Telerast and Curdle still, wandering through plague lands with the plague that we've heard so much about. She's like, oh, it's real bad.
And she's just is like immune to it.
She's immune to it.
Fine.
We don't know exactly why, but Telerast and Curdle think it's maybe because she was possessed by Cotillion. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Or maybe blessed by them.
And so she's she's some kind of godling because of the possession. Maybe not. There's some protection that is offered.
Yeah. Anyway, it's real bad. People are in real. I mean, there's just goop coming out of every orifice. Their stomachs burst. They have fevers so high it cooks their brains in their skulls. A bad day. Bad day.
Rough time.
Yeah, not something you want to hang out with. And she's like, hey, you know what? This is bad, but I've also heard old Igatan pretty bad. I heard there's some temperature issues over there.
Yeah, speaking of a bad day, some kind of weather got really hot.
There's an air quality alert for Igatan. So she's like, let's go check that out. We'll go into the Shadow Warren. We'll go to Igatan and see what's going down there. So she heads off. Next, we check in with Kalam and Quick Ben and Stormy. They, on the other end of the spectrum, find a banquet. Just like, hey,
having a
food.
Hey, food. And then they're like, I guess Stormy's like, whatever, and just immediately starts eating.
Not going to let good food go to waste.
Look, I get it. I get it.
Me too. I mean, me too. I'm the guy who's going to finish everybody else's plates.
Look, you can't keep me away from an unattended banquet. That's what
right.
I'm saying.
Show me a
buffet,
banquet.
I'm
going to sit down. I'm going to tuck my napkin into my shirt and I'm going to start eating. That's what you do at a banquet, right? Tuck your napkin into your collar.
Yeah.
Anyway, they start chatting over dinner, and Quick Ben's like, "Hey, notice you got that flint sword there." He's like, "Yeah, I got it from Talana Moss, who went to seal a wound in the sky." Cool. All right.
Like, so does that mean he's coming back? I'm like, he goes, if he can, I guess.
Yeah,
probably.
Stormy doesn't seem to care. It doesn't seem to worry too much about stuff, which is nice. It's a nice disposition to have.
Mm-hmm.
And Quick Ben's like, hey, I heard these crazy stories about this boat with a bunch of beheaded oarsmen on it. And he's like, oh yeah, we totally found that. I saw that.
I also like that. I mean, there's a lot of little sections with Quick Ben and Kalam where somebody says something and that person goes, how do you know that?
Yeah.
How do you know that? Interesting.
Yeah.
So they're like talking about the oarsmen. He's like, oh, the Adur's on here. And he's like, yeah, the Adur, they want their like Warren back. That was like their there. So now they're trying to get it. And Kalam's like,
Yeah.
how do you know that? What?
Yeah.
Who gave you that info?
Right. Yeah. And also, Stormy is like, can't bet against Shadow Throne and Cotillion, because back when they were Kalinved and Dancer, they never fought fair.
Interesting. See, the thing that happens right at this moment is then Quick Ben and Kalam both just stare at the empty chair.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think? What
I don't
is
know.
Cotillion like sitting there like holding his breath and like his invisibility space, or what?
I did not know what to make of that, frankly.
I don't know if they were looking at it like the things I thought is like, is he just here like listening to us like Pearl used to do?
Yeah.
Or is it that they are just thinking about the fact that there's an empty throne in a warren? Or sort of like the
it
two
could be
things.
that. It could be they are thinking about the member of the bridge burners that's not with them. I was not sure what that moment meant.
It felt important, and I was like,
yeah, it felt very important. I mean, it ends that scene like ends with that, and I was like, what am I supposed to get from that? Wasn't quite sure.
Yeah.
But next up, we have this. I love it. Chapter 7 we talked about last time. Incredible sequence. This harrowing journey of the soldiers. But chapter 8 starts. We haven't checked back in on the soldiers in a while. I love that when we do, they are now doing this ritual where they all go up and let the rat bite their finger. Such a clever idea. I love it. This reverence for the rat that led them. And a rat shall lead them.
Yeah, it's like,
it's so cool.
This is the blood we didn't have to pay.
Yeah.
And
it starts as like, we're all going to go up and pet the rat to show it, to be nice to it. And it starts biting them. And then like the biting becomes the symbolic thing, it's just very funny.
It's very funny. And I just like that Bottle's like, she's just like hungry and pregnant.
Yeah. It's like,
and everybody's like, the rat. They're like making it into a bigger thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's, all this talk about this sort of this rumbling underbelly of discontent about Adjunct Tavor abandoning them, and people are like, what was she supposed to do? Plague's a coming. She thought we were dead. What's she gonna wait around? And other people are like, yeah, but also abandoned us. Not cool.
Yeah. And they praise I mean, there's like a couple. This section is like hard for me to keep straight because now we have so many characters and there's lots of little tiny chapters that are like, these characters had a tiny moment. These characters had a tiny moment.
Yes.
So I might be jumping ahead, but the fact that they, they're looking at their new captain, whose name I forget, and being like,
Ferdinand Sort,
being like, it's amazing that you trusted Sin in this moment to let this, to actually save us. And so she's being sort of, for being, not a great first impression to the squad.
Yes.
Seems to be coming back around.
Yeah. They sorted her out. That was dumb. I also like that they like can't sleep because it's dark and the stars, first the stars are so bright, and then they like can't sleep because they just want dawn to come so bad to have light, because they've been underground, and it's just so cool that they came out at night and they're like, oh, just give us sunlight. I love that detail.
Yeah.
But yes, you're right. There are a number of little small scenes here. There's this, we check in on Sergeant Hellion, whose jaw's hurting, and she's like, oh, Herb punched me. I'm going to kill that guy. We have this lovely little moment. Go ahead. I was going to say we have this lovely little moment with Flashwit, who's a kind of a newish character, talking about how like, I just wish I was smart. I just want to be smart like those like Bottle and the other sappers, and Mayfly's like, no, you don't want to be smart. You want to be dumb. Being dumb's where it's at. We're dumb and it's awesome.
They're like, everybody else was freaking out and we just thought it was pretty dark, and it took a while.
That's right. We were too dumb to be scared. Isn't that great? Ignorance is bliss.
I love this, like paired with, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but they mention the heavies as this group, and that Flashwood is part of that crew. But the end of that section is so sweet of them chatting, and they're like, I just want to see the dawn. Like, they're the crew that was like, I just want to see the dawn. Like, it was dark in there. I think I'm waiting until I could see the light.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, I think the sky's getting brighter. And Flashwood goes, yes, this is what I've been waiting for, I think.
It's so good. Yeah. I love how Erikson writes low intelligence characters, you know?
They're so endearing.
It's so endearing. It's lovely, you know? It's lovely. A Korab being another one. You know, it's wonderful because you know, there's no judgment of them. There's like a dignity to their stupidity.
Yeah.
You know, it's lovely.
And then the value. They're like, they have distinct value. Like Korab's like loyalty.
Yes.
Like, you know, Leomin's basically mocking him to his face a lot, or at least the Dunsparrow is actively mocking him to his face a lot. But in the end, it's like, Leomin looks like such a turd, and Korab is like, this is like this sense of honor and everything that he has actually is this boon to him as they go forward. It's like a nice flipping from him being like, I'm a silly guy who's doing weird death escapes to like a very heartfelt character, and it's very well balanced.
The simpleness of the thought, the purity of the thought it's unencumbered by nuance. You know, it's lovely. So then we have the, you know, Cuddle kind of thinking about Bottle and being like, hey, you know, that's kind of weird that he even was able to bring us out of there. Maybe he made a deal himself with the Queen of Dreams, which is interesting. I think Cuddle's wrong about that, but it's interesting that that's even raised as a possibility.
It's interesting that they like get out of the hole, and I mean, it does feel like this flood of emotions, and part of those emotions are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're out, and part of them are like the anger at Tavore, and some of them are now suspicion of like, that was too crazy. What is like just trying to make sense of it all. It is interesting to see the different takes.
Totally agree. It's so sophisticated, the way different people are handling the same event. It's just really awesome. So then we check back in with Gnoz and Ganath. Gnoz and Ganath.
Oh, little buddies.
The Gan twins. And they've reached Raraku Sea, which, you know, used to be Raraku's desert, but now is a sea. And Gnoz is like, I'm gonna do this ritual where I'm gonna call all the dead people here, and I'm gonna just start saying names, see who comes up, see who shows up. Every name I can think of, frankly. Just whoever comes to mind. I'm gonna try to remember all the names. And I'm like, oh yeah, I've done that with this book. Just try to remember all the names. I get that.
Yeah, this is the meta commentary as a reader.
Gnoz is like, you feel like Erikson's like, who did I invent?
I like to imagine that while Erikson's writing, he's just got like the list. You know, he's got the dramatis personae from every book on the wall in front of him. And he's like, all right, starting with A. Absolute. Oh, she's not dead. Okay. B.
It's funny. Anyway, so this ritual summons a bunch of ghosts and dead people, including his old pal Hedge. Hedge shows up, is like, hey, what's up? I visited Fiddler. I visited you. I'm just having the greatest time being dead. It's so fun.
I do like that it keeps coming back to Hedge.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like a different one every time. He's like the spokesperson for the undead bridge.
He really is. He really is. Yes. He's we elected Hedge as our representative of the dead bridge burners. And Gnoz says, I need to get a Daragoth because Djim Nibral is running wild. And so we need the only thing that can take down a Djim is a Daragoth. So Hedge is like, okay, that's cool. I know that the Nameless ones, a bunch of high mages of the Nameless ones, sacrifice their blood to get Djim to come.
Mm-hmm.
So
and like, he knows that all of them except one, right?
Right. Yeah.
Which is Lady Spite. I think.
If you say so. I think that's true. I think that's correct. All right. So they set off. They're like, okay, now you're going to hang out with me. Got my ghost friends and we're going to hang off. Next, that's the end of chapter 8. Chapter 9 starts in a really cool way where Ikariam's like, hey, this is the way it's always been.
Oh my gosh.
This is the way it's always been. I've always been hanging out with this Terralac Veed fella. Been my companion through the whole time. And I'm like, it's jarring the way it's written, where you're just kind of dumped in the same way that Ikariam is. And he's sort of getting gaslighted, just like you're getting gaslighted as the reader.
I wanted to
awesome.
Go back and read the first chapter with Mappo and Ikariam and see how it maps to this, to see the conversations. And I think the big difference is it is that same like, well, I don't know you, but thanks for sticking with me, friend.
Yeah.
And we're like,
wow, I don't know what I would be without you here all the time, constantly with me.
Terralac is like, man, you murdered everybody.
Yeah. It's the difference. It's literally the opposite of what Mappo says, like trying to keep those things from him.
Yeah. And Ikariam's like, oh, bummer. That sucks.
I sound like a real jerk.
And he's like, anyway, we have to go back to see where you murdered all the people. And he's like, I guess we do. And just it's like the second he says that, I'm like, is Ikariam going to freak out? Is Ikariam like but everything is like so normal. It was incredibly
effective.
Like,
what's
very
Veed's
eerie.
deal? But the biggest, it's like, it feels so menacing in its friendliness, you know?
Yeah. Ooh.
It's so good.
And I really, because I thought he was there to kill both of them.
Right. Like, what's his deal? What's his end game here? He's like, and he knew to be that way with him and
say those things, like just being, wacky.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's in his head. I think it's just him and Ikariam. I don't know if it goes to him directly after that or what part of it, but he was like very impressed with Mappo, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like he goes, I need time to like recover because he killed 2 of me.
Right. Isn't that that's not Terralac. That's the other guy. That's the Jim, right?
Oh, that is the Jim.
Yeah. Because Terralac's not a Divers that we know of.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Jim was there and Jim did the attack and Terralac just filled the gap.
Right.
Terralac
like sweeps in and like evidently just takes advantage of the fact that that Mappo is indisposed and he can swoop in and be buddies, be the new Mappo.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was saying before the show, I read the chapters ready to record last week and now everybody's going to see really how terrible my memory is.
No, your memory's amazing. Anyway, so there's this discussion now also about this place, Enapatha Napur, which is where Ikariam like murdered everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I really shouldn't have murdered everyone. He's like, no. Your enemy is evil. That's why you are. Fight the whole world because the whole world is evil. And it's like, ooh, that's dark. That's a dark take.
Mm.
But in the next scene, we check back in with Haborik, and he's thinking about Enapatha Napur. He's like, we're headed to the dead city of Enapatha Napur.
Yeah.
Dead city. Why is it dead? Ikariam killed it.
Yes.
And he knows of Ikariam. And he's like, oh, how did that go down? Oh, yeah, I remember this this soldier shot an arrow. It ricocheted and happened to hit Ikariam's friend in the throat. And that would just set him off. It's like, ooh, that's bad luck.
Ooh, that's a bummer.
Ricocheted arrow, you know? Bad idea. It kills an entire
arrow
city.
Into the friend of somebody who will kill everybody in their families.
But also it makes me think like Ikariam's had lots of friends over the years.
I thought the same thing. Like this is everything is what Mappo is what Terralac now being all a stand-in for the fact that he did have a close friend who was with him. And so there's like whenever his memory got wiped, there's still a familiarity of having somebody there with him.
That's an interesting take. I thought of it more like this is a role that needs to constantly be filled. And if somebody goes down, we got to put somebody else in their place. And We got to make sure this person always has a chaperone.
Yeah.
you know. But anyway, it's interesting that Haborik is hip to all that, and we have this awesome moment with Solara where she's pregnant, she's uncomfortable, she's unhappy, and she kind of muses on the idea of gods. And I love this sequence of like maybe there's only one God, and all the gods are facets of that one God. And it's all about our interpretation of it. And maybe there's it's fighting itself in this weird way. I was like, oh, what a cool concept.
Yeah. I mean, it felt very much like, I mean, how many times am I going to be like, oh, just like real Earth? I've heard people say that, like, we've got so many religions that have so many parallels. And
right.
If there is a God, could it not be that all of these people have just interpreted the same thing from wherever?
Right.
Yeah. I like that this was something that was thought about by these people, because even in the book, every once in a while you get people being like, I don't deal with gods, even though they're like very physical, all things considered, things that are like in and out of the world. You still get people that are like, and then you get,
not for me.
Yeah. You still get people like pondering their greater meaning, etc. And they're not just a layer of society in a way. It's interesting.
Yeah. Not just taken for granted or a given.
Yes.
It's cool. Then we have this really funny moment with Grey Frog, who like ate an entire goat and is like, oh, I really shouldn't have done that. The goat. The horns are still in my tummy. Uncomfortable.
Grey
Not
Frog
good.
is such a little weirdo. I just love him.
He's so good. It feels like there's not even really any point to the scene other than like, we're just checking in with Grey Frog, and it's a funny scene. It's great.
He's still eating stuff.
Still making bad decisions.
Everybody's still a little bit horrified. Anyway, no more goat.
Then we check back in with Karsa Orlong and Samar Dev, who are still traveling. This awesome moment where they're like, oh, there's all these veteran, and Karsa's like, I want to eat one of those. Those look good. I'm sick of eating this other crap. I want to eat some delicious steaks.
Who's
up for steaks?
He's like, who wants this? And then and people are like, He's like, all right, get out there. And she's like, no.
You'll be the bait.
Yeah. And she's like, absolutely not.
She's like, you need me. Oh, so you need me to be the bait because you can't do it by yourself? And he's like, witness. And he's just like out there. So rad. He's like, oh, I don't need you. Witness this. And he just, takes down a bull. Two of them, I think.
Yeah, because he goes and he goes and attacks one, like starts this sort of initiates this this hunting, and then it turns out there's actually a second one that was hiding in the trees right there. Yeah. He's like, two of them, no problem.
Yeah. Samar's like, oh snap, he didn't think about two of them. And Karsa Orlong is like, a witness.
He's like, throw me another one.
Obviously continues to be a badass, and Samar's like, I'm not going to live through this. And then she's like, how many people has Karsa hung out with that did not survive hanging out with him? Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I've seen a few.
But we've seen, I think, a lot. I mean, there's a lot of people that have died, but I think a lot of people who have been in Karsa's vicinity actually do survive.
That's true. Yeah, they benefit from it for sure. Yeah.
Wetness.
Wetness. Just wetness. I don't know what I'm doing. Then we have a moment with Djim.
And this is the one I was thinking of.
Yeah, where Djim is like, I lost two of. I love how we did a whole, I think it was pre-spoiler talk about like divers and what if you lose one or two of your body, animal form things, and it literally happens to Djim. So he's lost two of his animal bodies, and there's a really cool reveal here where it's like, oh, if I eat enough, if I devour enough flesh and blood, I'll grow them back, back those extra
puppy
wolfy
dogs.
Barts. Pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. And he's basically just like super weak and just damaged. So when he, reverse divers back into a singular shape, he's basically like he's been in a really brutal fight, but he's still a whole piece.
Right. He's not Voltron. Yeah, which is what I was hoping for. But it's funny too. He's like, if I eat enough blood and flesh, maybe I'll grow back my other 2 of the 7. Maybe I'll even grow an 8th.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, is that how that's cool?
Like you could just keep getting them. So does that mean like, I mean, the people who turn into like bees or seas of rats, that sea of ratmen, I mean, rats are smaller than wolves, but like it wouldn't take that.
Is it like a 1-to-1 mass equation?
Was all those rats like an indication of like I've killed that many people, and it's a sea of them? It's like, oh wow, that's a lot of death.
Yeah,
I don't imagine it's 1-to-1.
I don't think the math.
It's probably a mass thing. Somebody physics this out for me. Thanks.
Yeah, you gotta, divers equals meat c squared. Anyway, he sort of has this like we find out that Jim actually has a sort of sense of morality from when the first emperor asked him to be the guardian. So it's like, oh, Jim's not so bad. He's not a jerk.
Stop.
He's just misunderstood.
Oh my God.
All right. So then we check in with our other favorite friend, Iskarol Pust. Oh, Iskarol Pust. He's
buddy.
riding on a mule he hates and who hates him, which is very funny already. And we have these 2 little moments which may come back. I wouldn't put it past Erikson to have them come back, but I also wouldn't put it past him to just have thrown this in for a gag where he like releases fish into Ruraku Sea is like, oh, I'm going to people Ruraku Sea with fish for the first fish in this brand new sea that exists. The first fish. And then Megora, his wife, shows up and is like, sharks.
It's so ridiculous. Because those are, they're fish too. They'll be there, but they will eat all of Pust's fish.
She's just like, I'm just going to screw up every plan he has as much as I possibly can.
Oh, gosh. Marriage, love, huh?
It's so great.
That's romance.
But then we get to see a completely different side of Pust. Because he's moving through the Shadow Warren on his mule, who is stubborn and hates him. It's great where he's just like cursing at the mule, talking to it.
Yeah.
And sees Jim in the Warren, and they have this fight. And Pust is. Go ahead.
Jim's like, oh yeah, here we go. There's some easy target, easy flesh.
Yeah, look at this idiot. I'm gonna eat him so good.
And then
Pust is a badass.
So sick. Oh,
Pust is a bad High Priest of Shadow is not just a fancy title.
Yeah. We see,
you know what I'm saying?
What's up. That's mean,
right.
It's one of those things that was like, of course there's a reason that he's around. He's not just a quirky dude. But like, I don't really know what that means yet. It is like so satisfying to be like, of course he is. Of course he is. Oh, so awesome.
It's rad because, Jim is so established as being this force of havoc, this unstoppable beast. And yes, fought Mappo and went down, but we know Mappo is really powerful. So it's like, still Jim's like, it's really scary and really intense. And Pust is like, bamfing out of existence and they're knocking heads together. It's like such a cool fight too. And he's shooting, shadow magic at it and melting its flesh. And then there's like, oh, I'm going to get him. And he's like, bing, not, popping out of existence.
Great. Oh. He's like, shows up. He's like, you kidding me, puppy dog? You know who I am?
So rad.
And then Jim like literally scampering away with his tail between his legs. It's just like, it's such a, we've talked about it a bunch of times of like the scale of power of seeing something that's like, this is the most badass thing that you've
Yeah.
seen so far, and immediately putting that in contrast with something else. It's so effective.
Really
It's
true.
so effective. And it just
And Pust leaves going like, well, that wasn't even what I came here for. Like that wasn't even my entire. I wasn't even doing. That was just a
that's just a couple
diversion. You know,
yeah.
a diversion. Never mind. What he really was coming for, we find out immediately after that, is to rescue Mappo.
Mm-hmm. Which is awesome.
Awesome.
Awesome. So glad Mappo's not just gone. Obviously, there's like, he fell off the cliff. What does it mean? But
Dude,
Mappo
and how
having another
he's found like jammed in
a
bones all
crevasse.
broken and it's just
yeah, it's
so cool.
Mm-hmm. And I think Pust, it's it's a sense of normalcy where he's like, all right, time to get you patched up, buddy. And it feels like everything that we've seen being like this weird, like, he's being stupid. He doesn't understand what I'm saying, man. And suddenly he's like showing being magical badass and being like, time to care for somebody who needs care. And it just feels like
but also he is about to like rub spider venom on him by accident, right? Doesn't he have like a vial of spider venom? And Megora's like, what are you doing, you moron? He's like, using medicine? And she's like, that's spider venom.
That's literal poison.
Like, sorry, wrong vial.
It is a drop of normalcy, but not a raise in intelligence.
right. But then we have Megora,
who's a real
revealed
healer,
as also a badass, where she has got this crazy ritual where she literally siphons power from the moon itself.
So awesome. And she's like, I can only pull it over here for a little bit. And everybody's like, where'd the moon go?
Yeah. It's so rad that it's not like, I'm going to use the moon. It's like everybody on the planet sees something happen to the moon. It's awesome. Yeah. But she like summons thousands of spiders and they swarm all over Mappo's body and wrap it in webs. So cool.
I did like that. She's like, what is that? Is that spider venom? No. Spiders.
Yeah. You don't want spider venom anywhere near this poor man. I'm gonna get actual spiders, the thousands of them. Then next scene, Lestari-Yil. We get the reveal of who saved Lestari-Yil. And it was Cotillion himself.
Being a silly guy, being a sneaky boy.
Sneaky boy. But I love we have that detail where he's like, that moon looks weird, doesn't it?
I don't know what's going on. Something's going on with the moon.
That's weird. Is it lower and nearer than it should be? Me? Anyway. So he, Cotillion's like, hey, I saved you, but you got to really have, introspective moment. You got to think about who you're loyal to. Mm-hmm. Is it Tavor or is it Lysine? And the Star's like, aren't they on the same side?
Yeah. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah.
Tavor's like demeanor, this cold iron and like doing what she thinks is right and sort of ruthlessly so, I think is, and just the perception of her starting to shift. It's interesting to have her go from this basically villain character that we don't know that like put her sister in the mines,
right,
to doing everything to try and get her sister back, and then just realizing that her sister's died somehow. They just found that out, and she's just so sad. And it feels like that has affected her such that maybe that was her last sort of grasp at like a humanity compassion mode, and now she's just in full military mode, and the pendulum sort of swinging back in that other direction.
Yeah. Well, and the military thing seems like it's headed to a bad place too, because everybody thinks that she betrayed and abandoned and had a loss and all these things that are going to undermine her military, prowess and trust.
I thought, excuse me. I've thought a lot about, there was one of the epitaphs that talked about, the history of like, oh, what Tavor had to do at Egatan and how dark that was. And based upon the Egatan chapter that we got, chapter 7, I'm not sure if that is what Tavori had to do at Egatan. And so I keep wondering if we're going to get back there because of the buried city or whatever else might be there. If that was in reference to what was happening in the chapter, or if we're going to see her slowly descend into like that. Y'all perceive that as a loss. I'm making it a victory and what that means. I don't know.
We also don't know a lot about Lacine, right?
Still.
We still, right? We had that one moment where she talks to Kalam where he came to murder her and she's like, no, you don't understand. I'm on your side. And we kind of got a little sympathy for Lacine, but we kind of don't know what she's up to.
And she was like Skelly Bones, right? He was like,
well,
I'm here
she was
to get
just
ya.
using the Skelly Bones as a vessel, but yeah. But
I don't know if that was like clear to Kalam because it was like all shrouded in darkness or whatever. And then it was like the smoke cleared and then it was just bones. And we haven't seen her at all.
That's right. That's right. She's yet to impress us. Could do this all day. And often do. Also, we find out that Cotillion saved her because like her dancing was so rad. It's like, oh man, I owe you. You don't owe me. I owe you. Why? Sick moves.
Number 1, Shadow Dancer.
Sweet moves. Then Cotillion heads over to check in with Pust and Megora, and he's like, "Could you put the moon back, please?" She's like, "Sure, yeah, no probs." And he says something really interesting. He turns to Megora and says, "You're one of our daughters." I don't know what that means, but that sounds cool.
So I don't know who Ardata is, but
it sounds important.
Does sound important.
Sounds powerful.
Does. Sure does.
I bet Ardata has something to do with moon magic.
If you had to make like any prediction, where's Ardata from? What's Ardata? Moon magic.
I mean, I think Ardata is another. I mean, we've seen sort of the sun or the light, and I would assume that there's moon something. That's what I'm thinking. Too. Moon witches, moon lady, kind of the patron god of moons. I don't know. That's my guess.
Good guess.
That's my guess. Ardata. All right, so that's the end of chapter 9. Chapter 10 starts with Kalam, Quickben, and Stormy arriving in Egatan, and like, oh,
dang,
this is bad.
They're like, I think Kalam or Quickben, one of the two, is like, ooh, that's one of the oil harvest must have been. I wonder if it was an accident.
Yeah.
And because they don't know, just
I
love
how
that's burned
puts
down
it
all
together.
right.
Quickben's like, smells like olive oil. I wonder if the harvest was all in there. I guess it all would have gone a boom if it blew up. Why was that all there? He's like, I love Quickben's like super smart Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah,
it's awesome. And they're like, let's do a lap. Let's check it out before we head out. And as they do, they're like, hey, it's our old friend Absalar.
Mm-hmm. And then
what are the odds of you and me here in this burned out husk of a city at the same time?
I love that, like, before Absalar joins them, we get, Absalar perspective being like, oh, I recognize the folks in those saddles. And Tellerest and Curdle are like, you cannot go over there. They are bad people. Which just makes me be like, which one? Why?
Yeah.
I know you know things, you little chumbawambas.
They totally do. And that the people they think are bad is because they're actually bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they like scatter, and she joins them, and they're like, you got like buddies. What's going on? I sense them. Are they familiar? She's like, I guess so.
Yeah.
Where are they?
If you want to.
I don't know.
They buggered off somewhere. I don't know.
But I also just like, she gets with them, and then it's another like Quickbit and Kalam each saying something. Or Apslar being like, so you've been hanging out with Hood, huh? And you, Cotillion nearby, and both Quickbit and Kalam are looking at each other again like,
They're like, what?
No.
You didn't tell me. He's like, you didn't tell me. And they're like gonna fight over it too, because they're just like, you kept big stuff from me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very funny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's you're with Hood, you're with Cotillion, and this guy, he's bound to a Talana Moss, I guess. What's going on with all that?
He's like, just hanging. Stormy just seems like there for a lot of this.
Yeah.
But they'll be like, a lot of things, and they'll be like, that sword, huh? He's like, I got it anyway.
Yeah. I'm not gonna worry about it. They literally point out like, hey, Death, Shadow, and Fire walked into a bar. Like they're all hanging out.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting too. And Apslar's like, guess what? I'm joining up. We're all gonna hang out. Let's do this.
Yeah. And she is the one who points out to them like very explicitly, or like confirms their suspicions of the gods being at war.
Yes. And she also has one last assassination target for Cotillion.
Yes.
We don't know who that is, but for some reason, linking up with them is going to make it easier for her. So I'm like, who does she want to murder?
Somebody in the 14th, I imagine.
That's what I'm guessing too. And I don't know who that could be.
I know. I'm like, name a name.
Yeah. Yeah. Then we have a few quick scenes back to back again with the 14th. Sort promotes some people, much to Sergeant Ellion's chagrin. The Gessler, and we had this moment you talk about with the heavies, where they're talking about which heavies should join the squad.
They specifically call out that they're like heavies they're different. They're not like other people. And it's interesting for the heavies to be like, we're dumber. And they're like, they're special. And I don't know what the confluence of those two things means, but it feels significant.
It seems like similar to the sappers, where like a certain type of person becomes a sapper, a certain type of person becomes a heavy, a certain, it's like, it's cool that there's these personality types that are drawn to those roles.
Yeah. I got the video game still building in my head. Every time it's like, okay, that's my role. Okay, I got it.
Totally right. And then there's this interesting consideration of fanaticism and fanatics, which I thought was a really cool musing by the characters, but also by Erikson about the nature of fanaticism. And Bottle is like, the rat Egatan's going to come with us. And that's a terrible idea. She's pregnant. She's got to nurse her babies. How are you going to do that? She's like, we'll figure it out. It's going to be fine. Mm-hmm. Take this rat. They're like, there's enough rats in the world. You don't have to nurse this one. Mm-hmm. It's funny. And Korik is like swapping out bones with the bones from Egatan.
Korik is like... He's like walking away. Everybody's like, don't wander. And Korik's like, walks slightly away. And then he's like, finds himself. It's like Akarium in water. He's like, oh, all these bones. And they're like, I guess he's disappearing into the bones over there. And he's like, ooh, lots of phalanges abound. And that's like, something's happening. I don't know what Korik's deal is. Good for him with the trophies, I guess.
Well, I think that, there was that whole thing about, where Fiddler suggested everybody wear the bone as a charm, because they were like, oh, we're cursed.
Right.
Because of Grub, had the bone, and it's like, oh no, we're all cursed. He's like, no, bones are good omens. Let's all wear bones.
Oh, I forgot about that.
So I think this ties into that.
Yeah. To me, this is like one of those moments where it's like something Fiddler said to calm everybody down. And then somebody believing believing in it hard enough that it is becoming something.
It manifests.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. I agree. And then Fiddler shaves his beard. Big step. Thought
huge moment.
As somebody who
moment
has a beard, it's a big step. And Apslar, Kalam, Quickbit, and Stormy show up, and they're like, gang's back together. Whiskey Jack's old running crew back together.
Mm-hmm. And they point out that's half of their original crew.
That's right. And they're like, what about where did old Crocus go? And she's like, oh, we broke up. And they're like, well, and they're like, well, what about Truth? And he's like, I got bad news about Truth.
Yeah.
Bad news about Truth. And there's a sad moment where, Stormy finds out about Truth and walks off and is having a hard time.
Yeah. I do like that when they're like, oh, where's Crocus? She's like, we separated. And they're like, oh, okay. And she's like, also, he was my cutter now. And they're like, oh.
It's funny. Really?
Oh, I get it.
I understand why you
makes sense.
I'm kidding.
Desperate.
And Fiddler's like, you got it. Quick, Ben, you got to meet this bottle guy. He's like, all right, what do you want me to do? Shake his hand? Like, yeah.
Well, they said,
if you bite you.
They said, if you want to get bit. And they're like,
sick zinger.
What does that mean?
Yeah. So then back with Ganoz, Ganath, and Hedge, they arrive at this wacky bridge, this kind of crazy, weird realm of mists and shadow, where it's a bridge over troubled nothing.
Bridge over troubled oblivion.
That's right. Yeah, bottomless pit, bridge over bottomless pit. And they're like, oh, this is a bridge that's based on the jagged myth of what the underworld looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool. And
I don't know.
Is like, let me summon somebody real quick. Hang on a second. Throws this like wheel on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Trigal Trade Guild shows up.
Like instantaneously. I like how he's like, oh, they said they'd be close. And he's like,
yeah.
Wagon. Like, it's instantaneous. I forget.
I had this vision while I was reading it of them just like constantly riding through the Warrens and just like, somebody needs us. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if it was after the TTG showed up or before, but I like that they were looking at the bridge and they're like, I think maybe it was the guy in the carriage who I'll talk about in a sec, where they talk about this being like under Hood's Warren. This is the Jaghead idea of what the afterlife is like, but people think there's like just Warrens in the world, but it's like layers. It's like 7 cities where it's like layers and layers of the city that was built and then collapsed and then built and collapsed, but it's layers of belief and memory and the way things were that people just forgot about. Like society changed and that space still exists, and maybe if they didn't visit, maybe it would have just fallen out forever, but instead they're here and they're looking at it, so it is also here too. It was interesting conversation.
It's really awesome. It really shows how every part of this story is informed by Erikson's archaeology background. Where he's so infused with that knowledge of how things are cyclical, how things layer upon one, that nothing sprouts from nothing. Yeah. It all is built upon what came before. That even in the mystical realm,
Yeah. That archaeological grounding infused with the magic of the world. It's very special.
I agree.
Yeah.
100%. Anyway, so the TTG comes barreling out of another Warren, and we meet Carpolan Demasand, who's the driver.
Is this like Krupp's brother?
Is it Krupp Demasand?
It's not Krupp Demasand, but he is described in a similar manner. He has similar manners of talking. He's like, where the food at? I want to eat. I guess better food. Like, before they said his name, I was like, is Krupp on the TTG? And then it's like Carpolan Demasand, and I was like, Carpolan Demasand.
I had an image in my head of somebody much burlier and stronger than, like more barrel chested and rugged than Krupp, who seems like a little roly-poly man.
I think you might be right, but like the mannerisms felt so connected to the way Krupp acts that I felt like they were very similar of person,
Interesting.
of characterization.
Okay. I did like how this guy talked though. He's cool. And he's like, hey, we're very expensive service, but it comes with certain perks, including, we can hang out and have a little wine first. Well, let's it's the full 5-star treatment you get when you order the TTG.
When it comes to dangerous Warren realm crossing, this is as nice as you can get.
That's right. This is a top tier. First, we have a little beverage, wet everybody's whistle a little bit. Then we cross the crazy demon bridge where the crazy demons attack us.
Yeah, I am going to find this section because, sorry, I'm like very stuck on Carpal and Demoscene sounding like crap. But sorry, we're gonna go across the bridge with not crap.
Not crap. All right. Hey, I will grant you that. I didn't get that image in my head. I didn't see that connection that you saw, but I will grant you that it's maybe similar.
Sorry.
The other thing that happens here, that is one of my favorite things of this section that we read this week, is we get a full laying out of what it means to be ascendant. Which I was like, yes. And I love the description of it. This metaphor of mountains that emerge under pressure. And there's always going to be mountains. Where there's pressure, the mountains will happen, but they will also crumble and fall away, and new mountains will come up. There will always be ascendance because of these pressures that cause certain people to rise up. I loved that. And that gods need followers. And if you can be an ascendant, means you're more powerful than a regular human being. But if you don't have whatever that triggering event is that gets you belief and followers, and there's some tipping point that takes you from just being super powerful to actually becoming a god.
Yeah.
I loved all that.
It puts you in range of godhood.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. I also really like that. And it just, when we think back to all the people who might be ascended, it makes a lot of sense. The only thing that sticks out of my brain, I'm like, but they were possibly ascended too, is Gessler and Stormy and Truth.
Yes. But Truth, right.
I don't know if they were talked about, like maybe they were ascended, but I'm like, who was following them? They just had like been gilded.
Well, no, but you can be ascendant without having any followers. And also they were kind of talked about as partially ascendant. So ascendant is what happens when the sort of mountain push thing happens, where like some intense moment forces you to transcend your
humanity.
Yes. You become supernatural.
Yes.
But then something else needs to happen. Like for an elder god, blood needs to actually be spilled. For more primitive spirits, their name has to be remembered. There has to be this next level. And then they talk about Trake as like he was one of the first heroes, I think that's what they call him, right? The first heroes. And that was just another name for ascendant. But then what happens for him is this like 1-2 punch of Fenner getting cast out of the Pantheon and Treach being killed, or
he like he accidentally died. Otherwise he was just gonna run around and just be like a big tiger.
He was gonna like literally go insane and just stay in tiger form for the rest of forever. Just think he's a tiger. Tell him you're a tiger. Tell him what you can do. He's great, is what I'm saying.
Oh my god.
Anyway, I thought this whole description was really clarifying for me, and just a beautiful metaphor, just an awesome idea of how godhood, the mechanics of godhood, which I just think is such a neat underlying thing. And again, we're book 6 before we get
a clear understanding.
But hey, it's still awesome. And this also this notion that the bridge burners are ascendant, but sort of like as a group.
Yes. Yeah, like
Which
the
I thought was so
concept of the
interesting.
bridge burners.
Yeah.
So even folks who may not have been the person within the group, it's like the bridge burners has been such an honored concept that
Right.
all of them as a unit
Yeah.
have become ascended. And then I think it like becomes more likely that, individuals could could reach godhood from that.
Right.
It almost feels like a double push.
Yeah. It's really neat.
Yeah.
So then we have this awesome fight on the bridge where they're going to cross it and they get attacked by these demon creatures. And there's just dozens of them coming out. Gnoz is hacking and slashing at them. They're trying to fight what they call the shareholders. Like the assistants are falling off. He's trying to grab them back and keep them on. The one guy is like, "Tell my wife I love her." He just leaps off, and because you get a higher payout if you die in the line of duty.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty cool.
I like how instantly it was chaos. They're staring at this bridge and you think like, oh, I'd be able to like see something on it or like whatever. And it was like the second that they were on it, it was swarmed. It just like described as though they were like clinging to the sides, but it's clearly like they just they were just there suddenly. And how quickly it's like 10 across the bridge. Oh my God, fight. Okay, now we're through it. And that intensity and that sort of supernatural moment, I really enjoyed that as like a tight battle. Was cool, especially because it leads into them being like, whew, I guess we made it through that. What's ahead?
What do you think that was all about? Do you think there's something worse up ahead? He's like, oh yeah, and they find this other carriage, which is a really cool moment of like everybody freaking out. There's a Trigal carriage here that didn't make it through. That's real bad. That means something real bad is up ahead. And we find out that it was this Sidara Orr, who is related to Turban Orr from the first novel. That was the counselor at the party that gets murdered by Ralik Nam.
Deservedly so.
And Perrin's like, okay, I got this figured out. There's not a guardian in here. It's the Hounds of Shadow. He's like, how do you know about the Hounds of Shadow? He's like, well, they got released from Dragnapur, the sword, and they want to murder things.
And they were like,
oh my God, who would possibly release the Hounds of Shadow from Anamander Rake's sword? And Perrin's like, that would be me.
That's my bad.
I did that. He's like, so you're responsible for my friend's death? He's like, yes.
I just like that they were like, the Hounds, they were in Dragnapur and they were released. They're like, well, that's not possible. He's like, well, it is because I did it.
Yeah. It's not only is it possible, I can tell you exactly how I did it. Yeah.
And then they get to the other side. They push the carriage just into oblivion. They continue along. I like the description of like, it's this bridge. So you get the upward slope and then it peaks and then the downward slope on the other side of the bridge. And they make it all the way across the downward slope. And then immediately it's water that they didn't expect to be there.
Right. And he's like, this shouldn't be here. He's like, remember when I told you about how they're not being a guardian? I think I may have been wrong about that.
Yeah. Could have been wrong.
Gano is really not endearing himself to these folks. He's like, listen, I know exactly what's going on. I'm the jerk that made it happen.
Look,
like, really? Okay.
They're like, this guy doesn't know as much as he said he does. But I'm looking forward to, the chapter ends there. Something's coming. And he's like, everybody leg it. But I'm ready for the puppy dogs to come in for the rescue.
Yeah. Well, do you think it's the Daragoth?
I don't think it's the Daragoth. I don't know where in the world that they are.
I think they're in the Nascent. I think they're in the place where Troll and Onrak freed the Daragoth. In the watery place that Karsa Orlong was and where the Salanda was. I think it's all the same watery flooded, the thing that that what's his name? Old Coin Skin. What's our friend from the last book? The guy Roulade, that he flooded. I think it's all the same. The Warren that is flooded, I think, is the same Warren through all the books. I could be wrong, but that's what I got. I think the fact that he's like, there shouldn't be water here, it's because Roulade flooded it.
But I thought they drained that Warren into the desert. I thought that was now the Rawaku Sea. I thought they broke it, and that's what made the sea. Maybe this is like the leftovers of it. Also, I thought this was like a spookier place. You might be totally right, because I'm like, does the Warren then just collapse if they like did whatever? Yeah, memory foggy.
My guess is a total guess, but my guess is that Perrin's looking for the Daragoth. Onrak and Troll freed the Daragoth. I think the Daragoths are coming.
Okay.
That's what I think is going to happen, but I could be wrong.
What is Dijim Nabral?
He's a Divers.
He's
that really long word that begins with a T that I always just skip over when I read it. It's really long.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. To Rob Rabal or something like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
He's
okay.
that.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm here with you. I agree. It's probably the Daragoth.
I could be completely wrong, but that's my guess. Anyway, that's how the chapter 10 ends, with some sort of scream in the distance, and something's a coming. I thought these chapters were fun. My favorite part, as I said, was like finding out more about ascendants and how that all relates. It's such a cool logic, a cool, mechanics of it are cool.
Oh, there's one more little there's lots of tiny tidbits. One of the tidbits I think happens at the end of that chapter is he's like, I'm the master of the deck. And they're like the errant. And he's like,
yeah.
Who's the errant? And they're like, the guy. Who was the guy? And he's like, whatever. Because he doesn't know, which is interesting, because we met him. We spent a little bit of time with him.
Right.
And then in a lot of places we're like seeing these pulls from the last novel. We're seeing when Absalar's going through the Warren, she's like seeing the Adur, and then this errant being like a very direct call out to
the errant was what the master of the deck was before.
Yeah.
And also they're like, I don't think the Kachain Shamale killed it.
Yeah.
Or no, is it the Kachain Shamale?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think they killed the errant. And we're like, oh, I know they didn't, because he was in the last book. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Good pull there. I'm glad we didn't skip over that, because that was really interesting and juicy, which I think is going to play out more subsequently. All right. Well, we do have our favorite sections for this novel. I have one long one and two short ones.
Are either of your long ones about Krupp?
No.
Okay. Well, then
it's all you.
He's my boy.
I love it.
I have like two long ones from Krupp, but I'm going to keep this one because I think he actually says more interesting things. One, he's very funny in his first sort of sentence. And the second one is him saying things that, what's his face? Piran is like, I guess that was actually intelligent, kind of, somewhere in there. There's something he said that seemed valuable. I just clicked on it and then just accidentally clicked back to the other section. So here we go. And I like that he is also a little insulting. So this is Krupp and Perrin in the flashback. Even the gods cast shadows, master of the deck. But what do shadows cast? I don't know. Gods? Krupp's expression grew pained. Oh my, a nonsensical reply. Krupp's faith in dubious friend lies shaking. No, shaken, not lies, is. See how Krupp shakens? No, not gods. How can gods be cast? Do not answer that. Such is the nature an unspoken agreement regards rhetoric. Now, where was Krupp? Oh, yes. Most terrible crimes are in the offing of in 7 cities. Eggs have been laid and schemes have hatched. One particularly large shell is about to be broken and will have been broken by the time you arrive, which means it is as good as broken right now. So what are you waiting for? In fact, foolish man, you are already too late, or will be, by then, and if not then soon, in the imminent sense of the word. Soon, then, you must go, despite it being too late. I suggest you leave tomorrow morning and make use of warrens and other nefarious paths of iniquity to hasten your hopeless quest to arrive. On time, and in due time you will indeed arrive, and then you must walk the singular shadow, between, dare Krupp utter such dread words, between life and death, the wavy, blurry metaphor so callously and indifferently trespassed by things that should know better. Now, you have worn out Krupp's ears, distended Krupp's largesse into bursting his trouser belt, and heretofore otherwise exhausted his vast intellect.
So delightful. It's just words as a playground. It's just, I love it. I love the fun that Erikson has with it. I also love that the thing that I feel like everybody has experienced, where you lay out this thing for somebody like, okay, well, if I don't have the ham and cheese, then you'll have, and they're like, cake. And you're like, okay, clearly you haven't been listening to anything I've been saying. Like, you're so far away from understanding what I'm talking about. Like, how are we? It's just very funny.
Well, you know what? Don't answer that. Don't even answer that.
Yeah, don't even.
I like it because it clearly is like some important thing. What is Shadows cast? And I'm like Shadow Warren? Like, then
Yeah.
he paints a picture of like what we're experiencing. He's going between these worlds. I'm like, this must be the bridge that he's talking about. Where is he arriving too late? He's probably arriving right on time to see that Jaga lady explode out of the ground. Like, how does Krupp know these things? Maybe that's not it, but it feels like the exact journey that Perrin is on for the rest of the chapters. So it's
so good.
It's just so good, and he's such a jerk.
It's such a fun, like the delight in the turns of phrase and the words flopping and meaning the opposite thing in the next section. It's just so much fun. It
is so great.
Well, my longer sequence is also a very fun word playground and a fun thought process. This is Sergeant Hellion, who has woken up and decided she wants to murder Herb. I love this because I love being able to read her thoughts. So here we go. Maybe Captain's got a bottle of something. Maybe if I call her over and talk real sweet, real sane and reasonable, maybe then they'd untie me. I won't kill Herb, I promise. You can have him, Captain. That's what I'll say. And she'll hesitate. I would. But then nod, the idiot, and cut these ropes and hand me a bottle and I'll finish it. Finish it, and everybody will say, hey, it's all right then. She's back to normal. And that's when I'll go for his throat with my teeth. No, they're loose. I can't use them for that. Find a knife. That's what I have to do. Or a sword. I could trade the bottle for a sword. I did the other way around, didn't I? Half the bottle. I'll drink the other half. Half a bottle, half a sword. A knife. Half a bottle for a knife, which I'll stick in his throat. Then trade back for the other half of the bottle. If I'm quick, that should work fine. I get the knife and the whole bottle. But first, she should untie me. That's only fair. I'm fine, as everyone can see. Peaceful, thoughtful. Sergeant? What is it, Herb? I think you still want to kill me. What makes you say that? The way you growl and gnash your teeth, I guess. There's not stuff there.
It's so
I love
good.
It so very much. Like, she's like having this inner monologue of like, I'll never know. I'll do it. But she's like,
the whole time she's like,
he's like, I think you want to kill me. She's like, they'll never know I want to kill him.
Oh, look, I'm totally sane. I'm totally fine. I'm going to talk really sweet.
Everybody knows I'm sane. Then they'll give me the bottle. It's so beautiful. So
I love that
funny.
She's tied up. And I love that that's the whole section. Like, that's that whole chapter is in her head and her plotting of getting everything she wants.
That's the only reason
poorly.
we check back in on her is to just get that insight into what she's thinking.
It's so great.
So great.
The other quote that I have that I actually didn't plan, but now I had to, because I had to, is the introduction of carpal and Demisan.
Okay. Oh yeah, you had to prove your point.
Sorry. I have a problem. So it's a bit longer, but I think it's important. I mean, immediately. Okay.
All right.
The guards, like the thing arrives, the on the bench, the driver set down the brake. Like the driver's also like having his time. He like stops the carriage, pulls out a flask and like drinks it all and then belches. And he's like, anyway, opens the carriage door. The man pushing his way through was huge, dressed in sodden silks, his pudgy hands and round face sheathed in sweat. Paran spoke. You must be Carpal and Demisand. I'm Ganuz Paran. Thank you for arriving so quickly. Knowing the reputation of the TTG, of course, I'm not at all surprised. Nor should you be, the huge man replied with a broad smile that revealed gold-capped, diamond-studded teeth. The smile slowly faded as his gaze found the bridge. Oh dear. He gestured to two of the nearest guards, both Pardu women, both badly scarred. Nistar, Artara, to the edge of the mists on that bridge, if you please. Examine the edges carefully. Without a retaining wall, we face a treacherous path indeed. The small, bright eyes fixed on Paran once more. Master of the deck, forgive me. I am fraught with exhaustion. Oh, how this dreadland taxes poor old Carpal and Demisand. After this, we shall hasten our return back to our most cherished native continent of Genebacus. Naught but tragedy haunts seven cities. See how I have lost weight? The stress, the misery, the bad food. He snaps his fingers and a servant emerged from the carriage behind him, somehow managing to balance a tray crowded with goblets and a crystal decanter on one hand while navigating his egress with the other. Gather, my friends, not you damn shareholders. Keep a watch out, fools. There are things out there, and you know what happens when things arrive. Nay, I spoke to my guests, Ganuz Paran, master of the deck, his ghostly companion, and the jagged sorceress. Join me, fretful three, in this one peaceable toast before the mayhem begins.
I see it. You're not wrong. I see it. There's echoes. Yeah.
Even pudgy hands, round face, sheets in sweat. That's a crop. That's a crop.
Okay, I buy it. I'm convinced it's got some similarities.
It's got some cruppish. It's a little cruppish.
It's cruppish. It's crup-like.
Yeah.
So I have two more. They're both very short. I like this quote. Burdens were born from the loss of innocence, naivete. While the innocent yearned to lose their innocence, those that had already done so in turn envied the innocent and knew grief in what they had lost. Between the two, no exchange of truths was possible. That line. That feels like the world to America right now.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. I had that highlighted as
between the two, no exchange of truths was possible.
There was a lot of like catching up and like character moments. That was one of the ones that was like, that's beautiful and resonant. Yeah, totally. I had one single sentence one that I really loved. And then that's it for me.
Yeah. Go ahead.
The sky overhead was dark, lowering and yet still, as if a storm had drawn its first breath, only to hold it.
Oh, how do you write like that? It's not fair. Not fair. Here's my one sentence quote that I think is also incredible. Only fools think the past is invisible.
Ooh, that gave me like a chill.
Good
ones.
Good ones. Okay. I always tell myself to check beforehand, and I didn't again. But I believe we're back to 2 chapters next week.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff. Thanks again, folks, for putting up with our little break last week. We try not to do that. It may happen every now and again. If you want to know, if you want to keep tabs on that, or if you're curious, hey, why did there no episode come out, et cetera, information will always be posted on the Discord. So that's the place where I'll announce, hey, we won't be able to do it this week if that happens. We're trying not to let that happen, but life happens. So if you're curious about what's going on, the place to disseminate that information is on the Discord, 5x5 DLC on Discord.
It's also a great place to ask questions. You can tag Jeff, you can tag myself, and let us know what you want us to talk about in the non-spoiler topic.
Yes, we really do appreciate those suggestions. It's fun. This whole thing is fun. I love doing it. Thank you, folks, for hanging out with us. We'll see you next time. Let's dance it out.
When the world's too dark of a place to be, and you need an escape from reality, open up those pages, it's sci-fi or fantasy, whatever genre you please. And join a book club, 'cause you won't read it on your own. Join a book club, so you'll be held accountable. It's just a means to an end, but you're doing it with your friends, so join the book club by DLC.